right, now we're going to tie a pink lady egg. I use Glo Bug Yarn. When I buy my Glo Bug Yarn, when I'm tying pink lady eggs, I really look for the bags that have a lot of this tangerine color in them. As you can see here, there's a lot of this tangerine colors in some of these strands of Glo Bug Yarn. If they've been out in the sun for a while, they might turn a little bit chartreuse, but I want that kind of mixture of color in there so that when this fly gets wet, it looks exactly like a glob of eggs. It looks exactly like a spawn sack. So when you purchase your pink lady Glo Bug Yarn, try to find your strands that have the multicolors in them, just like that. So I usually cut off about a 4-inch section, and I'll rub my fingers up through here to take off any stray fibers. Throw those down. Now, traditionally, when we're tying sucker spawn patterns, traditionally we're using Angora yarn. Comes in 3 strands. Here, when you're using Glo Bug Yarn to tie a sucker spawn style fly, you have to create your own strands. So here's how I create my own strands. I want thicker strands for larger hooks and more of an opaque pattern. And I want thinner strands for smaller hooks where I can get a lot more translucency. So I'll strip off material like this and just give it a little twist. And what I'll do is I'll lay down a lot of these strands in front of me so I can just pick them up and start tying. I'll choose the thicker strands for larger hooks and thinner strands for smaller hooks. Today I'm tying on a size 14 egg fly. So I'm going to continue to pick off a few more strips of this, and I just give them a little twist. And that's about the size I want to use for that size 14 hook right here. Looks good. So I'm going to put 2 of these strands together. And I'm going to snip off the ends. And I normally like using chartreuse thread when I tie these. The chartreuse thread really kind of makes that fly pop when it gets wet. I'm going to start my thread right behind the eye of the hook. Go all the way to the bend. This is a 3-loop pink lady using 2 strands of Glo Bug Yarn. My thread's pretty much all the way to the back of the bend of the hook, to the bend to the end of the straight shank. Now I'll lay that pink lady Glo Bug Yarn, and I like to leave a little space behind that eye. I don't want all that bulky material up by the eye of the hook, the front of the hook, because when I tie on these flies, when I tie them onto the end of a leader, I want to be able to get my leader right through the eye of that hook without any complications, or without having to use something to clean that area out. So I'm going to start in the back of the hook, and I usually go some wide turns. And you can see that material just behind the eye of the hook. I want a nice clean head of the fly. So I'm going to bind that down, come back through, back to the back. I'm going to go back up front one more time. Make sure that material is on there really well. Make sure it's not going to come off of the back of that hook shank. And so right here I'm going to start my loops up to the front of the hook. I'm going to wrap that thread up a few more spaces. I can turn it, make sure it looks good on that side. Now you have your 2 strands of Glo Bug Yarn hanging off the back of the hook. I take those strands and I give them a little twist. See how I give them a little twist? I give them a little twist. And I bring them over the top of the hook and I push them back. See how I push them back and form those loops? Once I get those loops pushed back, I'll hold it with my left hand and come right back over the thread, or over the material with the thread. I usually use a lucky number 7 going around there, whether that helps me catch more fish or not. I usually do about 7 wraps, make sure that stuff doesn't fall apart. I bought a lot of commercial egg patterns and sucker spawn style flies where you catch one fish on the fly and it's shot to hell. So you want to make sure everything's bound down real nice and tight so you can catch a lot of fish on it. Okay, that's the back 2 loops. 2 loops of material, 1 loop forward. Now we're going to bring the thread right in front of the material once again. I'm going to bring it forward right to about right here because I need to make 1 more loop but still have a clean area in the front to finish off the fly. Same thing, I'm going to take these strands, I'm going to give them a little spin. Forward, pinch it, push it back. Forward, pinch it, push it back. I'm going to lay those 2 loops right in front of the last 2 loops of material. 3 loops all together to the front of the fly. Bring these back. Looks like I got enough room there to finish it off pretty well. Bring the thread forward right in front of the material. I'm going to tip that hook back a little bit to give me some room to finish it off. Twist, twist, pull them forward, push it back. Bind that material down. Do a few wraps to the left, to the back of the hook. I want to look at that like this, forward and sideways. Make sure those loops look pretty good on top of that hook shank. Here I want to wet that material down to finish off the fly. And I'll even give that a little spin. If you leave it dry, if you don't wet it down, those strands go all over the place. So I like to wet it down. I want to get a real nice clean front of the fly. Nice clip right there. I got a little bit of material on the side, but that's okay. I should be able to bind that right down. I'm going to come back a couple turns of the thread. Now, if you have a lot of material hanging over the eye of the hook, you can actually drop your thread backwards. See how I dropped that thread back? I loosened it up, I pulled it back, and now the thread will bind it down really nice right behind the eye and the front of the hook. That's starting to look really good right there. Looks pretty good right there. I finished it off with a couple of these half hitches on my finger. 1, 2, bring it down, pull it down like that. Boom, complete. Quick, easy, simple, catches a ton of fish.